So you want to get into cars, but you have no idea where to start. You keep on hearing people throwing around terms like naturally aspirated versus forced induction, brake horsepower versus wheel horsepower, V engines versus inline engines, and it makes you just want to rip your hair out because you have no idea what any of it means. Well, in this video you're going to learn all about that and more so you can finally speak the language of the petrol head. Let's start with engines. The most common type you find are 4 cylinders and 5 cylinders, usually found in hatchbacks and mini sedans. Inline 6s and V6s commonly found in full-size sedans and entry-level sports cars. V8s found in muscle cars, sporty SUVs and high-end sports cars, as well as V10s and V12s found in high-end supercars and sports cars. However, we aren't going to be seeing a lot of those anymore due to emissions and things like that. Now you may be asking yourself, what's the difference between an inline engine and a V engine? And what do the numbers next to it even mean? Well, the numbers refer to the number of cylinders the engine has. An inline 6 would have 6 cylinders, and a V8, you guessed it, would have 8 cylinders. And if that's the case, what does the inline or V stand for? Well, it's the layout of the cylinders. An inline engine just means that each cylinder is in line with each other. And a V engine, on the other hand, simply means that the cylinders are angled next to each other in a V shape, usually on 2 separate banks. Unless you have a VR6, which is a compact V6 that has all its cylinders on one bank. Now that you know about engines, let's talk about the power figure used, aka horsepower. And more specifically, brake horsepower versus wheel horsepower. Horsepower is the figure used to determine the amount of power an engine makes. Brake horsepower simply means the amount of power an engine makes before calculating the loss from the drivetrain. In simpler terms, it's the amount of power lost on the journey from the engine to the actual tires. The only way you can actually determine BHP from an engine is to put that engine on an engine specific dyno. On the other end, you have a wheel horsepower, which is the power a car makes to the actual wheels. The power that's made after the drivetrain losses. Usually you'll find that car manufacturers use brake horsepower instead of wheel horsepower because it looks better on paper. However, if you want to find out how much power your car actually makes, slap it on a dyno. From there, we move on to the good old shut-it-down sound that we all know and love, aka forced induction. Now, to understand the differences between naturally aspirated and forced induction, you have to understand how an engine works. An engine is essentially a big air pump. It sucks air into the cylinders, it sprays fuel creating an air-fuel mixture, then the piston comes up compressing the mixture, and finally the spark plug ignites the mixture causing an explosion. And when your engine is running, thousands of these explosions happen every second. Pretty cool, right? So what exactly is forced induction and what does it do when you introduce it to an engine? Well, forced induction is literally what it says. It's a way of forcing air into the engine. It's done through either a turbocharger, which uses exhaust gases to spin a turbine which compresses air and shoots it into the motor, or a supercharger, which is driven by the engine via a serpentine belt which compresses air and again shoots it into the motor. You also have things like centrifugal superchargers, but we'll talk about that another day. So now you may be asking yourself, which one is better? Well, they both have their pros and cons. A supercharger delivers instant power because it's constantly being driven by the engine. However, because it's driven by the engine, it actually first removes power due to the extra workload the motor needs to do to run it. A turbocharger, on the other hand, adds power without taking anything from the engine. However, because it uses exhaust gases to spool, it usually has a bit of lag before the power comes in. Not to mention, if you're into exhaust noises over induction noises, turbos actually act as another set of mufflers, so they can quiet down your ride quite a bit. So really, it just comes down to personal preference. Now lastly, you may have heard people use terms like JDM, Euro spec, or land of the free bald eagle muscle cars. It's actually pretty simple to understand. JDM stands for Japanese domestic market, which means that the vehicle in question needs to be bought in Japan for it to be considered JDM. That means a 350Z built in California and sold in Santon isn't actually JDM. Euro spec, on the other hand, refers to cars from Europe. Mainly your BMWs, Mercedes, VWs, etc. Rarely anything out of Europe. And Euro spec sometimes means cars that were specifically spec'd for the European market. And finally, you have bald eagle muscle cars, which you probably guessed it, American muscle. These are cars that usually just have a hard time taking corners, have more power than they know what to do with, and are usually on the cheaper end of the sports car lineup. Not to mention, they're pretty sick. If you did enjoy this video, drop a like, subscribe, and let me know if you learned anything down below. And also, if you are a car enthusiast, drop a comment and help someone out who's trying to get into the car scene. With that being said, I appreciate you guys. I'll catch you next time.